we'll see.
Jacob Unruh, the Oklahoman, covers Oklahoma State. They're hosting Baylor tonight. Also, the story on the facilities upgrade of $325 million. Jacob, thanks for your time. Let's start with that. I read your story on it and appreciate that. The arms race continues. There's always millions. There's always something. Do you sometimes look at these numbers as like monopoly money?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, and here's the thing about this vision OSU put out today. That there's no money yet. It's a vision that they started talking to donors, and they're not pushing for a certain element to be done first. They're just putting it out there, and as Chad Weiberg said, they want to get ahead of it a little bit before stuff starts leaking. They're talking to donors about this and said, here's the whole vision. And I think it's a statement saying, hey, OU Texas, they're leaving. We're going to step up. We're going to have the best facilities now is what OSU is going out there with the aim to make this giant athletic village right there in the heart of Kansas.
And the donors seem to be ready to pull the trigger and sign the checks as well. Jacob Unruh with us from the Oklahoma. Paul?
Jacob, so tonight they're hosting Baylor. Baylor is pretty well set, but they do need to finish strong if they want to, kind of solidify their seeding. Oklahoma State, I wouldn't call them on shaky ground, but every loss probably isn't great for them when it comes to their seeding. What have you seen the last part of this season where they have kind of been more locked in?
I would actually put them on very shaky ground right now. 4 losses in a row has them back on the bubble. It's been kind of it's been a weird season all around, but Big 12's play has been really hampered by injuries. Early in Big 12, they lost Musa Cisse for a few weeks. He didn't play in Waco the first time, and that really impacted them. And then they get him back. They start getting going. They win a couple games, lose Avery Anderson for what looks like probably the season. And now all of a sudden, they win a couple games after that. They win 3 without him. Actually, you think, they might survive. But now you're starting to see the depth issues show a little bit. Their guard play has struggled without Avery. They don't have a guy that can necessarily attack the basket at will like Avery can and create some things with his quick twitch ability and things like that. And it's really kind of stalled things offensively, but the defense has been the biggest issue because he's their best one-on-one defender. He was the guy that did well against Keontae George the first matchup and shut down Grady Dick and Marquise Noel and guys like that all season. And now they don't have that guy, and their defense is starting to really show some cracks without him the last few weeks. And that's been the biggest issue is really the defense has been elite all season until the last week and a half, and it's just been a disaster. And they're searching for answers. They were better against Kansas State, but they still weren't close to what they were. And so if they can get that turned around, they can get in the tournament. But if they keep losing, say they lose tonight, I think they're gonna be on the outside looking in, and they got to win at Lubbock on Saturday, which everyone knows is really hard to do.
Jacob, what's just been kind of the mood around the program in general? Obviously, there's been some struggles, but also been some moments when you go, okay, like, being on the bubble, for example, having that opportunity, even though they've been on this skid as of late. Just what's kind of the feel around their trajectory and how they've shown these last couple of seasons in the direction they're headed?
Yeah, I think they're frustrated right now. I think, Caleb Boone talked about it Saturday that he's frustrated that they're not meeting the standard they had set earlier, just a few weeks ago. And because they feel like they're closer to that team than the one they've played like the last 4 games. And so they're a little frustrated, but they feel like they can get back to that point. And Mike's trying to keep positive, saying, they've got a lot of opportunities left. But the question is, how many opportunities do they have left? Because they have tonight, Saturday, and if they keep losing like this, you got to imagine, they might win a game in Kansas City, but they're putting themselves in a bad spot for Kansas City. And so they've got to figure this out quickly. And I think they've got to avoid the frustration letting it carry over in the court because they're not getting the 50-50 balls. They're doing little things like that or just getting past them because of some of that and just some bad luck at times too. But I think frustration is kind of what I've noticed a little bit more. And exasperation, they know they're a good team. They know they're an NCAA tournament team. They're just not playing like it right now.
All right, so Mike Boynton, we know what they dealt with a year ago with the NCAA and that decision and saw his emotions. and they still battled every day, week in and week out. I was impressed with that. Brad Underwood, of course, was there, but a cup of coffee before he went to Illinois after coming in from SFA. What is Boynton good? Everything's fine despite what's kind of happened because of what they were dealing with the NCAA? Is everything for him just like in cruise control into the future?
I'm starting to think no on that. I think the thing to realize with Mike is he's one of the youngest coaches in the conference still. Because he was hired at 35 when he took over the program and has grown. And I think he's really improved as a coach. I think he's showed some improvement this season. But, he's coaching against Hall of Famers all the time in this conference for the most part. And that's shown some warts that he's not really gotten past yet. But I think the biggest thing to remember is this is the first season he doesn't have NCAA sanctions other than the scholarship limitations on him right now. And so I think OSU people are keeping that in mind. People, behind the scenes, more than fans per se, and keeping that in mind a little bit. But I think if they miss the tournament, if they collapse like this, I think he's gonna really start feeling some pressure next season to go and make a run because he's got a really good recruiting class coming in, a top 10 class in the country, really good players. He'll have some experience back. Bryce Thompson should be back. And so I think the pressure is starting to mount, especially if they don't make the tournament. But I think if they make the tournament, they get in, say they win a game or two, I think he's going to be pretty set for the most part. But it's starting to show some cracks as far as how comfortable he can be.
How much? I mean, you mentioned he's the youngest coach, but how much does the fact that you can't really wait around in this league make that harder?
Yeah, that makes it harder. But at the same time, I like to ask people too, who are you going to go get this better right now than Mike Boynton? And the thing is, like, Mike Boynton is a kind of a guy that another program, maybe even a bigger program, is going to snatch right up in some sort of capacity if you put him out there. And, because he's very well liked, especially around campus, and very well respected across the country. And so, you put a guy like that out there, and, frankly, he's a guy, too, on campus that has earned a lot of grace for his ability to go and get fans involved and to just endear himself to the community and stuff. And so I think, you want to act quick in a situation like that, too, but I don't know that Mike Boynton is the guy you act quick with necessarily just because of his ability to lead and coach and rally people. So, this is the first year they haven't finished strong under him. They've usually finished strong, and so it's kind of an anomaly in a way.
Is the fan base showing up? What's the attendance like? Because sometimes that's a barometer when it comes to an AD looking down the road.
Yeah, no, it's been really great this season. Actually, better than it was last season. And better than maybe a couple seasons ago before the pandemic. And so now Saturday was interesting because there were a lot of purple snuck in for Kansas State. There was a lot of Kansas State fans made the trip, but it's been really good crowds. They had a near sellout against Kansas and things like that. And so, and it wasn't just Kansas fans; it was predominantly OSU fans. And so, they've been building up the attendance this season as they've gone along. And so, I think that's another good sign moving forward. It's just they've got to win, and Mike knows that. Mike's not, he's not blind to this. He doesn't, he's not ignoring the factor. He knows they've got to win. But I still think some of that goodwill will help him out for a little bit.
All right, back to the facilities upgrades. They basically, it's what they're saying is, okay, with Texas and OU out, we want to be the dog. We want to be the alpha. We want to have the best facilities, and yet everyone else is doing that as well. But that's kind of the surge behind making sure they have money to get this done.
Absolutely. I mean, you look across, you're right, it's an arms race. You mentioned it earlier. That's what you do. But OSU needs some of this stuff too. Like they need an indoor track facility. They just won the women's team just won indoor track title for the Big 12 title, and they don't have a facility to practice in, and it's absurd. And they need a new softball stadium. They got one of the best programs in the country in softball right now, and they need a new stadium. It's a massive thing they need. The stadium they have is very outdated. So they need to win the arms races there. And then, they're adding some football stuff, moving the football offices across the practice facility, expanding things, getting it back. I thought one of the underrated things in this was the basketball practice facility. Because I was actually just talking about that, I don't know, a month or two ago with somebody saying they need one of those because I know Tech just built a new state-of-the-art one recently. And, OSU doesn't have that. They have a practice gym inside Gallagher-Iba and they have Gallagher-Iba. And a lot of times, Gallagher-Iba isn't used for other stuff, too. So between that and the women's program, they need some sort of new facility. So I thought that was huge. New wrestling facility also, the wrestling program, as big as it is, they're just expanding on some things and getting some important things that I think can really push them to where they're the top. And, and now the Big 12 has more security and things moving forward. So I think they feel like they have a chance to go and really push themselves forward along with the conference.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of this is just due based on your tweets that, this is all encompassing. This isn't just like a one sport or two sport thing. This is pretty much all over the entire athletic department. Somebody's, going to be positively affected by some of the changes practically. But Jacob, I wanted to ask you about football as we get closer into spring drill season here. Mike Gundy and company, obviously last year, very up and down. A lot of questions about, transfers and just the direction they were headed. But what are your thoughts as that starts to creep closer, then breaking back into practice mode, and just the feeling around the program right now?
It's a feeling of, I guess, change. We haven't really got to talk to Mike since the bowl game. So, there's so much change, though. Brian Nardo coming in as the new defensive coordinator, I think is fascinating. Shifting this, the philosophy to 3-3-5 and doing some things like that. And, a guy that's been at the D2 level and Youngstown State was, I think, the highest level he's coached at. And the guy that, Gundy believes in and wants to get acclimated. And so I think there's just a lot of change considering the amount of turnover on the roster, new defensive coordinator, things like that. I think this spring's going to be really big to see kind of just what changed, what works. The biggest change, obviously, being a quarterback. Spencer Sanders going to Ole Miss. And so I think when you look at that, it's like it's changed and a little bit of nerves, too. Like, how good is this team really going to be without a guy like Spencer Sanders who really carried them the last couple of seasons offensively?
Jacob, do you think anything's going on inside the locker room that caused all that? Or was it just, it's their turn in the wheel of college football to lose a bunch of guys?
I think it's a mix of both. I think that's their turn in a lot of ways. And, it's easy to forget they lost a lot of guys off the Fiesta Bowl roster going into, last offseason as well. Especially the defensive side, they lost a lot of guys there and were able to replace them because they had so much depth. Now the depth hit a little bit. Not the same. I think there was some locker room stuff. I don't know that it was as big as it got blown up to be at times. But I also think that a lot of this is just kind of what we're dealing with now in the portal era. That things are going to just move quickly like this, and and if guys feel like they're not getting enough time, they're going to go find it somewhere else if they can. And so I think that's just kind of what we're dealing with at this point.
Jacob, good stuff, man. Glad we had you on. We'll see what happens tonight. Obviously, Oklahoma State hosting Baylor in a game where Mike Boynton and company need a win. Baylor coming off the win against Texas. And we'll have you on, if you don't mind, again once the spring drills and all that kind of get going. Appreciate your time, Jacob Unruh from the Oklahoman. Coming up next,